America, welcome to your Leo Nation, where we believe in and support the rule of law. I am the Chief Mark Garrett. As usual, there is so much going on, and as I said so many times, and I will say in the future, there are a lot of things I like to let settle out, settle in, whatever you might want to call it, before I comment on them. I want to get it right, not necessarily get it first. One of the big ones, and a topic that I'm staying on top of, at least for the foreseeable future, is that of immigration. And the Trump administration won another big one here just recently with the Supreme Court ruling on the enforcement activities by the feds in Los Angeles, California, quite frankly, across the country, because this ruling is going to apply anywhere. But it came out of California, of course, and again, about racial profiling. This is the ICE agent supposedly just rounding up people who don't look Caucasian enough, I guess. We don't care where you're from. Don't care if you've been here for 300 years. It doesn't matter if you don't look right, don't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Apparently, according to this lawsuit, they were rounding up people and just throwing them in vans and shipping them someplace, I guess. So you have some district court that rules in favor of the complaint, and then it goes to the Ninth Circuit. What's going to happen there? Look, it can be a Thursday afternoon, and the Ninth Circuit may tell me it's Sunday morning. That's about how reliable. Actually, they're not that reliable. They're worse than that. We know they're going to tell you it's Sunday morning. They're reliable in that sense that they usually get it wrong when it comes to, especially the big stuff. So here we are. It goes to the Supreme Court for an emergency hearing, because this is going to affect the enforcement of immigration laws. And here we are. The Supreme Court rules 6-3 in favor of the Trump administration. And now the enforcement can continue, in my humble opinion, rightfully so. So let me just read a little bit. Again, 6-3. We know who the three are, ladies and gentlemen. Look, let me just talk about courts in general. There's a reason that the courts are number 3, the third branch. They're in Article 3 of the Constitution. And the founding fathers wanted it that way because they know that the courts are a crapshoot. Period. I don't care if you're on the left, you're on the right, what political party you tend to agree with or not agree with, what your philosophies are. I know this at the lowest possible level, or from the lowest possible level, with traffic court. I literally had judges rule not guilty for people I'd issued. It only happened a couple of times in all the years I was on patrol, but say not guilty, not because they didn't believe the person actually violated the law, but you know why? Because the judge said openly that they didn't like the law. They didn't like the ordinance. And so they're going to find the defendant not guilty. And even as a young police officer who doesn't have any experience in law other than testifying in courtrooms, I thought, that's not your job. Your job is to decide what the law is, what the ordinance is, and decide if there's enough evidence to either convict or acquit the defendant. That's it. That's your only job. Your job is not to interject your personal feelings about what a law is. Your job is to say, yeah, you violated what that horrible, ridiculous, insane law is. You violated it. If you don't like the law, sir, you should go lobby to get it changed, talk to your representative, start a petition, blah, 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 blah. But you did violate this ridiculous, stupid law. That's the only job of a court. But the founding fathers, in their brilliance, knew that courts are made up of often biased people. Now, not all of them, not all the time, and certainly not all of them. Some of them call it right down the middle as the law is written. But they know there is a real possibility that these lawyers in black robes are going to see themselves as the equalizer, the determiner of equity and equality. And so they're going to rule based on the way they think things should be, rather than what a defendant did or what the law says to do. So that's the case here about these 3 dissenters in the Supreme Court. And you know exactly who they are. And by the way, from a conservative point of view, you know who the concurring justices were too. I totally agree. So let me read a little bit from one dissenter. That's Sotomayor. This is her part of her dissent. Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented on Monday's ruling in a 21-page opinion joined by Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Sotomayor described the court's actions as, quote, yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket. Again, this is an emergency docket because to hold this off for another year or 9 months, whatever it is, in other words, that cripples the administration's ability to do their job as they see fit. We should not have to live in a country, she wrote, where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work in a low-wage job. What does that mean, appear to work in a low-wage job? I don't know. I guess. I mean, is that a 16-year-old? Is that a 50-year-old? I don't know, but whatever. Rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, she concluded. I dissent. This is one of the most ignorant and misleading statements. And by the way, there are a ton of them coming from certain people in this court and other courts. But to suggest that the Black and Hispanic and other persons of brown, persons of color working for ICE and DHS, that those people are going to round up people who look like them, who are also people of color, just because they're people of color. Not to mention all of the non-people of color that do their job within the law as they were sworn to do in upholding the Constitution every day, is an absolute insult to these individuals out there trying to make our community safe and trying to ensure that our borders remain secure. She is a disgusting individual with a statement like this. Let me tell you what Brett Kavanaugh wrote in a part. Again, these are just short. I'm going to read very short stuff here to you. Kavanaugh, his concurrence, a little bit longer from him. Kavanaugh, by the way, Kavanaugh, I've not always been a huge fan of, to be quite frankly. I mean, I was glad he got nominated and appointed, confirmed, and things like that. But for a long time, I thought Kavanaugh was wishy-washy. I'll tell you right now, as time has gone on, this guy's become more and more solid, and I think one of the most reliable constitutionalists on the bench. See, I didn't say reliable conservatives. And the reason I didn't say that is because I don't want a reliable conservative. I don't want a reliable liberal. I want a reliable constitutionalist. And early on, I thought in a lot of rulings that Kavanaugh was voting in conflict with the Constitution. But as of late, I think this guy has been pretty darn rock solid. He writes some great opinions. So Kavanaugh added, quote, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish reasonable suspicion for an immigration stop. Reasonable suspicion can rest on the totality of the circumstances. Here he stressed circumstances such as the extremely high number and percentage of illegal immigrants in the Los Angeles area. The fact that that undocumented immigrants all often gather in certain locations to seek daily work, and often work in certain kinds of jobs, such as day labor, landscaping, agriculture, construction. By the way, remember the left always telling you, oh, they're doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Blah, blah, blah. They're the ones who say it. The left is the one who pounds that into our heads, that they try to every single opportunity they get, that these people are doing this type of job, this type of job, this type of job. They specify working in the fields, mowing your lawn, washing your windows, cleaning your toilets. They specify over and over and over and over. So what did Kavanaugh do? He said, hey, by the way, you're right. They do a lot of these jobs. This is exactly right. He said it right there. So I forgot where I was here. Often worked in certain types of jobs, such as day labor, landscaping, agriculture, and construction. And that many of those illegally in the Los Angeles area come from Mexico or Central America and do not speak English, much English, can, when taken together, constitute at least reasonable suspicion of illegal presence in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, you know this is exactly right. I know it's right from being a police officer for 30 years in that county, in Los Angeles County. It's just a matter of fact. The fact that you may not like it, you may not like that someone who works often, as Kavanaugh said, in these types of jobs are found in these areas often, as Kavanaugh wrote, in these places of business often, don't speak any or much English often. The fact that those are realities, and you may think that it is unfair to an individual, that's just tough. But it doesn't mean that they are not indicators of someone's legal or otherwise status in this country. They are absolutely indicators, and we all know it. You know, I was listening to Andrew McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, and he was talking about this earlier today. And so I want to give him credit. But he was saying, listen, when he was a prosecutor, he prosecuted the mafia, he prosecuted Middle Eastern terrorists. And he said, and McCarthy, the last name, if you know him, the guy is like, he's about as white as my Your Leo Nation cup right here without the blue on it. But, and McCarthy, I assume he's Irish. He said, if I went around indicting people who looked like me when I was trying to prosecute the mafia and terrorists, people would think that I was nuts. He's exactly right. He's exactly right. And so is Kavanaugh. The fact remains that under the laws passed by Congress, this is Kavanaugh, and the president, illegal aliens are acting illegally by remaining in the United States, at least unless Congress and the president choose some other legislative approach to legalize some or all of those individuals now illegally present in the country. And by illegally immigrating into and remaining in the country, they are not only violating the immigration laws, but also jumping in front of those non-citizens who follow the rules and wait in line to immigrate into the United States through the legal immigration process. And that's about all I'm going to say on that case. That's where we are with it. The Supreme Court made the ruling. 6 of them, in my opinion, got it right. And by the way, some of those 6, in my opinion, next time may get it wrong. And maybe one of the 3, the Dissent, will get it right next time, whatever that means to you, wrong or right. But the point is this, is that the any court, Supreme Court and any court all the way down to a municipal court can get it wrong from anyone's point of view. So the more we rely on the court, the more we put ourselves as a country at risk, because there's a lot of power there when it comes to rulings. Thank God for the current Supreme Court we have right now, and thank God for that ruling. And now the men and women of ICE can go out there and continue to do their job, make our streets safer, and make our borders more and more secure every day. I'm going to jump over to this other story. It has some relevance to immigration. I think not quite as specific, but very poignant. But again, this comes down to the rule of law. This comes down to right or wrong. This comes down to policies. This comes down to ensuring the safety of our citizens. And when I say citizens, even people who are here legally or people who are not here legally, we don't want people to be harmed. When it comes down to enforcing the law and keeping people safe, or in this case, not. So this is a case out of North Carolina. I know you've heard about it, and we're not going to show the video here because we don't want YouTube to put us in the dungeon, and I wouldn't show it anyway because it's just too horrific to watch, even for a person of my background, seeing the most ugly stuff. It is ugly, but I want to talk about this case. I'm going to talk about a couple of aspects, but one that may be a little off the radar, not completely, I know, but a little off the radar, is the GoFundMe aspect. I find this fascinating with GoFundMe. So if you don't know, GoFundMe, was accepting donations, in other words, through these organizations that had set up donations for the murderer of this Ukrainian immigrant, by the way, who was here illegally. She came as a legitimate refugee. She came as a refugee. So before anybody, oh, well, that's because she looks like under Biden. She's been here 2 years. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, she looks very, 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 very Caucasian, and Biden let her in. Okay, by the way, and she's a true refugee. She escaped the war in Ukraine with Putin, with Russia, and she's here. But she was an immigrant. By the way, she came here, learned English very, very quick, had a job, so forth and so on. She wasn't working off of the government dime. She's taking care of herself, and God rest her soul. Let me read this to you. GoFundMe pulls horrific fundraisers for ex-con to Carlos Brown Jr. accused of murdering Ukrainian refugee in train. And by the way, I know this is from the New York Post. I understand they have to say, alleged, even though it's right there on video. It's right there. But anyway, GoFundMe has yanked sickening online fundraisers for the maniac accused of murdering a Ukrainian refugee on a North Carolina train after the legal defense funds sparked widespread outrage. Now, we're going to get into that. The fundraising pages suggested to Carlos Brown Jr., a career criminal with no fewer than 14 arrests, and I'm going to talk about that, is just as much a victim as Irina Zarutska, the woman seen being knifed dozens of times in a random attack. These are the groups that were asking for money to defend this guy, that he was a victim. Helping the 35-year-old homeless suspect would also support the, quote, fight against the racism and bias against our people. One fundraiser reckoned. Now, see, here's the thing. This guy is the perpetrator. This guy is, whatever analogy you want to use. He's the bomb that was dropped. He's the bullet that was fired. But the decision makers, the force behind all of this, are people like this that want to support, quote unquote, or fight against the racism and bias against our people. Now, this is not a guy who was, just picked up and maybe there's some DNA evidence, or I don't know. You have 10 witnesses saying, yeah, he pulled the trigger, the gang shooting, whatever it is. Everybody can see this guy now that the tape has finally been released. Everybody can see this guy committing the act. But according to this group and many, 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 many others, and a lot of politicians who won't denounce this type of language, he's a victim of racism. And that's why this young girl is dead. I continue with the article. Quote, while what happened on the blue line was a tragedy, no, it wasn't a tragedy. It was an act of pure evil. The tragedy is when a meteor, falls and kills somebody. That's a tragedy. When someone drowns, out swimming, that's a tragedy. This was an act of pure evil. What we mustn't lose sight of is the fact that the Carlos Brown Jr. was failed categorically by the system and the mental health services of North Carolina. And as such, is not entirely to blame for what happened, one page claim. Now, it may surprise you. It may surprise you, for those of you who know me very well and know my positions, my philosophy, there's a part of that with which I agree. Now, I will say the system failed. I won't say it failed him. It failed this young lady. And by the way, all of the other victims of this monster for the last how many number of years? A couple of decades almost. That's who the system failed. It failed society. It didn't fail him. He's still walking around and breathing in his psychotic, demented, evil mind. He's still here and probably doesn't give much of a damn about what he did, because he does clearly have serious, serious mental problems, as his mom said. He's a schizophrenic. He shouldn't have been released after his last arrest, according to her. She's heartbroken that he went out and murdered this young lady because she knows that he should have been behind some type of a retaining barrier. She knows it. So yeah, the system failed, but it failed the victims of this person and society at large. That's what it failed. Raising money to assist with legal fees for DeCarlos Brown Jr. Anything helps. This is a period, it's a funny sentence. Anything helps fight against the racism and bias against our people. Thank you for giving us a hand to push against this corrupt narrative. Another fundraiser spewed the corrupt narrative. What? Someone commits a crime and they should be punished? That's a corrupt narrative. The calls for cash sparked immediate fury after horrific surveillance video. Now, here's the key. After the surveillance video was released, we'll talk about that here in a second. So this happened over a month ago, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know exactly how long the fundraising has been going on, but it seems like for a little bit. After the video showed a killer pulling out a pocket knife and savagely attacking a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee on August 22nd, leaving the train carriage covered in blood. You can't make this up. He allegedly murdered in cold blood, and yet his supporters want you to think he was failed by the system. He did exactly what the system wants him to do, one person posted. What kind of a sick human being is donating to this monster? And I agree. What kind of a sick person donates to this kind of person? GoFundMe should be ashamed. So anyone who donate to GoFundMe for DeCarlos Brown should be named. I won't use the word here, even though they bleep it out. Should be named and shamed. Another person chimed in angrily, noting that he is accused of having killed an innocent person. Let me scroll on down here to GoFundMe statement. The platform moved to delete the pages as the backlash mounted and the screenshots of the psychotic fundraisers spread like wildfire on social media. This is what I'm wondering. Now, again, I don't know. I have no way of knowing when the fundraiser started. But it says that GoFundMe pulled it down after the video became widespread. Here's GoFundMe. This is a quote. GoFundMe's terms of service explicitly prohibit fundraisers that raise money for the legal defense of anyone formally charged with an alleged violent crime, GoFundMe said in a statement. Consistent with this longstanding policy, the fundraiser has been removed from the platform, and the donors who contributed to the fundraiser have been fully refunded. Now, did you get that first part? GoFundMe says that it prohibits legal defense of anyone formally charged with an alleged violent crime. Why? Now, you take away from that, what that means is they only see violence on. So I'm assuming, based on what their statement says, that they still allow people to fundraise for people who are charged with nonviolent crimes, whatever that may be. And I'm not being funny there. Whatever, petty, theft, shoplifting, a misdemeanor DUI, trespassing, whatever the misdemeanor is, or whatever the nonviolent. By the way, see, it doesn't say misdemeanor, it says nonviolent. So I guess if someone is charged with embezzlement, with forgery, with money laundering, in a lot of states, a certain number of DUIs in a time, certain time span becomes a felony. Generally, your third, fourth. In a lot of states, over a certain amount, that becomes a felony. That's considered nonviolent if you don't injure somebody. So apparently, they allow fundraising for the defense of people charged with certain crimes. I think we can all agree on that. Why? Well, this may also surprise you. I'm totally fine with that. I think everybody's entitled to a good, robust, efficient, effective defense if you're charged with a crime. That is our adversarial judicial system. You should be able to have a good, robust defense. So why does GoFundMe say that they only do this for nonviolent crime? I'll tell you why. It's because violent crimes tend to garner some level of interest. In this case, a lot of interest, eventually. when the media finally start releasing this video. Violent crimes garner attention. And GoFundMe, this is my opinion, realizes that most people charged with violent crimes are guilty. That's just the stats. Doesn't mean they all are, but they are. I believe that GoFundMe thinks that if they're seen in any way whatsoever as aiding and abetting, as facilitating the defense of someone who has been charged with triple homicide, this reflects poorly on them, and people are going to speak out that they did in this case. It's not a principle thing about, oh yeah, hey, listen, if somebody needs the defense, we're going to allow people to go ahead and fundraise on our platform. They're unprincipled. I believe everybody should have, if you want to raise money for this creep, raise money for him. That's all for it. I'm all for it. Raise as much money for this monster as you want to. But GoFundMe does not like the negative publicity. So what do? They say we're not going to allow fundraising for violent offenders because they know what kind of backlash is possible. But you know why they allow the funding for the nonviolent crimes, for the low-lying ones, the ones don't need publicity? Because it's another avenue of revenue for them. That's why they do it. Because they know there are countless people who need fundraising to defend themselves in court. And this is another avenue for them to make money. It's not about principle. These people are disgusting. If you believe in a robust defense, if you believe everyone should have a defense, if you want to allow one criminal defendant to fundraise to your platform, then you damn well should allow it for every single one or nobody at all. That's my take on GoFundMe. About this creep, this monster. Talked about his arrest record. Listen to this. Madman charged with, also New York Post, charged with killing a Ukrainian refugee, was free on what? Free on what, ladies and gentlemen? I think I talked about this last week. I believe it was. Maybe the week before. Cashless bail. And I talked about our great friend, John McKinney, Los Angeles County Assistant DA. Again, you got to go back and watch this. Go watch this episode on the horrors, the horrible effect that cashless bail has on society. Go look at it. He laid it out better than I can summarize it in a bit. I couldn't do it. He lays it out brilliantly. So he's out on cashless bail despite years of violence and mental illness. And yes, I'm going to talk about mental illness. The deranged homeless man charged with butchering 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Charlotte Train, free on cashless bail, after a magistrate released him, get this, with a written promise to show up for court despite a nearly 2-decade of history of violence and mental illness. You know who they are. You know all of these advocates for defund the police, decarceration, I'll throw this one in there, reimagining policing. You know who they are. We need less cops and we need more mental health care professionals out there on the street. These people are as deranged as the people they purport to help, like this murderer, this murderous monster. DeCarlos Brown was arrested at least 14 times in North Carolina for crimes ranging from assault and firearms possession, the sacred cow of the left. We need more firearms laws. We need more gun laws. We need blah, 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 blah. This guy had been arrested at least once, probably multiple times for firearms possession. But you know what? The people here in charge in North Carolina, in Charlotte, they think what we need is more mental health care professionals. Anyway, from firearms possessions to felony robbery, probably involving what? A firearm, and larceny dating back to 2007. So what is that? If my math, I went to public school, so forgive me. 2007, so it's 18 years ago. So, and I was just guessing earlier on. I knew it was a long time. So going back to the time when he was about 16 years old, something like, what is he, 34 now, 35? So 18 years ago, whatever it is. His own mother told local TV station WSOC that her son was schizophrenic and should never have been allowed to roam the streets. But Brown was a free man right up until the moment cops said he viciously stabbed Irina Zarutska in an unprovoked and cowardly sneak attack. Horrifying video. We see that on and on. So, and the article goes on. We know this guy, the judge said, the judge who let him out, no cash bail, knew that he had significant mental issues. His mom was an advocate for him getting some formal help before he did something like he did last month. Everyone in the loop knew what this person was capable of. They certainly knew his track record. Felony assault, felony robbery, arms violation. He had schizophrenia, mental problem. They all knew. Where was the mental help? Where was it? See, this is an excuse. Those who are anti-rule of law, those who are anti-accountability, self-control, self-policing. This is an excuse about the mental health blah, blah, blah version of this, because if they were serious about it, they said, listen, hey, this person really does have emotional, psychiatric, mental, I'm using mental as an umbrella because I'm not a healthcare professional, mental challenges. And so, although we can't hold them accountable, which I don't agree with, but for sake of argument, discussion here, we can't hold them accountable criminally in the penal system. But we can all agree as a community, as a society, that someone, either based on logic and clear decision making, they're going to walk in and rob a convenience store with a weapon, they're going to assault people committing, felony assaults, whether it's because they are just pure evil, bad people, or they're out of their mind, this person should not be allowed to live in general society because they are a threat to others. And if they are mentally disturbed like this guy is, they're also a threat to themselves. So as a responsible city council, a mayor, county board of supervisor, state legislature, whatever you want to call it, we should do everything we can in our power to protect this person, which means we're going to protect other people from him as well. So we're not going to put him in prison because he's out of his mind. He believes it's Napoleon and has wings. But what we can do, we can commit him indefinitely into a psychiatric facility so he cannot be a part of society and harm other people or himself. But see, they don't do either. They want to have it both ways. You can't hold him accountable criminally because this poor guy, first of all, according to a lot of these fundraisers, he's a victim of racism and poverty and blah, 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 blah. On top of that, he has mental illness issues, so he's not really in control of his actions. So you can't hold him there and blah, blah. So we'll just put him in and out of the facility for a few hours, a few days, and blah, blah, back on the street until he kills somebody. And here we are. So now what's going to happen? Will he be found capable of standing trial? Will he not? If he's not, does he go into a mental facility for the rest of his life? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. And this mayor here. By the way, there's no cops. I only learned this morning and read this article. There are no cops assigned to the transit there this woman was killed on. They farm it out to a private security company. I don't know if they're armed or not, but they farm it out. Obviously, there's no one on that train, at least in that car. But the police officers in Charlotte don't police the trains, at least not while they're in transit, while they're in motion. Maybe they do the stations. I don't know. But again, less police, more healthcare professionals, more counselors to the domestic violence suspect. Following the attack, Charlotte Mayor VI, is that a Roman numeral name? I'll call her Six Lyles. It says VI here. I'm going to call her Six Lyles. Issued a tone-deaf statement, and you're not kidding, demanding compassion for people with mental... See, here we go. I hadn't even read this. I swear, I had not even read this. Demanding compassion for people with mental illness while avoiding mentioning the victim's name or the suspect's lengthy rap sheet. She wants compassion for this and other monsters like him. Now, think about this, ladies and gentlemen. This is the guy we know of because he stabbed this woman dozens of times in front of a security camera, surveillance camera. Not much security there, but there was surveillance. How many others like him are in Charlotte or in North Carolina or in your community, your state? I don't know, but we do know, we can all agree they're out there. I can guarantee you, if they're probably over 20 years old, they've probably already had significant encounters with law enforcement or mental health care professionals if they follow in the mold of this monster. And there are people today in positions of decision making that are not keeping those monsters separated from you and your family as they should. They're more like the mayor of Charlotte here, Six Lyles, demanding compassion for people with mental illness. Lyles didn't respond to a message from the Post, New York Post, of course not, but hours later issued a stunning reversal on social media, calling out the courts and magistrates for letting suspects like Brown go free to stalk the streets. Which one is it? Which one is it, Mayor Six Lyles? Should we have more compassion for people with mental illness? Or is it the fault of the courts that this guy was in the street? By the way, it was the fault of the courts. But I bet you were not advocating for this monster to be locked up the last time he was released, probably by one of your constituents in that courtroom. Mayor Six Lyles. As I reflect on the tragic murder of Irana Zaritska, my heart continues to go out to her family and our community as we try to make sense of this horrific and senseless loss. Begins the statement. The first time Lyles said the young victim's name publicly. Then she goes on and on with emptiness and no resolve to do any better in the future. These are the people that the people have elected. These are the people that communities, counties, and states have elected to positions of authority. I'm going to finish up with another brilliant leader. Let me get a little sip here. I mean, this person is rock solid. You talk about a rudder in the water. You talk about an anchor for a boat. I'm using all these marine terms here. I got a boat recently, and I guess it's on my brain, so forgive me. But when you think about leadership, this person is the antithesis. And if it's not apparent now, I mean, I'm sure it's apparent, even for those of you who support this person, I'm sure it's apparent. But if it's not apparent now, then it never will be. It never will be. So happens to be another mayor, and that is the wonderful, wonderful leader, Karen Bass in California, Los Angeles mayor. And here's the headline. This is actually Fox 11, so local Fox in Los Angeles. LAPD no longer providing protection for Kamala Harris after backlash. Now, again, remember I said, hey, I'm not going to jump on there's some things I get right on top of. This one I just watched simmer for the last couple of weeks, right? So Trump cuts off Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection, not unlike every vice president. Dick Cheney, Al Gore, I'm forgetting them, whoever, all of them. Mike Pence, there we go. Sorry. I have some mental illness. Someone help me. It's been 6 months. I forget how long that's been in effect, but the law is 6 months. So Joe Biden gives Kamala Harris another, how many months it was, of Secret Service through an executive order. And then Trump says, no, we're going back to 6 months. Like everybody else before you, Miss Harris, like everybody else. And she still got, I think, an extra 2 months beyond the 6 months before she was cut off. So, of course, we know what's coming next. Oh, Trump is racist. He's sexist. It's retribution from his political opponent. Listen, again, for the sake of argument, let's say it's all the above. Let's say let's say Trump can't stand women of color or his political opponents, and he wants them to suffer as much as possible. Let's just say that's the case. He still didn't change anything that didn't happen to every vice president in the past under this law. Not a thing. She wasn't treated any differently. Now, I don't believe that's the case, but she wasn't treated any differently than anybody else. And that's all anybody should want or expect under the law or federal regulations, executive orders, but in this case, the law passed by Congress. That's all. Equal treatment under the law. That's what she got. But again, we know what Trump was called. All the key phrase words and phrase words. So LAPD, they get stuck guarding the house. California Highway Patrol gets stuck providing her transportation. Now, the funny thing is, ironically, I have some intel on the CHP. I don't know exactly where they stand today, but we know from early on the CHP was involved there. I purposely haven't dug around recently, but we do know from day one that the CHP was involved on the transportation side with Kamala Harris. Once this whole thing that Governor Newsom was all public, he ordered the Highway Patrol to provide her security. Mayor Bass ordered LAPD to provide her security. Now, again, where the Highway Patrol is, California Highway Patrol is now, I don't know. And it's not really important to this story today. So what happens? The LAPD has reportedly ended its special protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. The decision came after President Trump canceled the Secret Service, prompting criticism. LAPD officers were being diverted from their usual, not just usual duties, but their primary duties. Their essential duties of providing protection, solving crimes, preventing crimes for the people of the city of Los Angeles. It is currently unknown who will provide security for Harris, who is about to begin a multi-city book tour. Now, again, we know that Newsom ordered the CHP to provide protection, so I don't know what they're going to be doing. But here's the thing I want to get at. When this started, a couple of things. When this all started, it's because, one, again, Trump's being nasty. He hates Kamala Harris, and so he's going to pay her back by cutting off her Secret Service. That was one. And the other things are out there floating around about, she's in danger. We're not going to allow her to be attacked, to be hurt. God forbid, and I mean that, God forbid, killed. We're going to make sure we protect her, blah, 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 whatever. We don't care what Trump does. We don't care if he doesn't care about our safety. We're going to step up because this is so important, and blah, 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 blah. But the great leader of the city of Los Angeles, Kamala Harris, boy, got her in my mind, Karen Bass, now she into protection because of the enormous and absolutely deserved backlash she's getting. And I can tell you this, I did some calculations. My calculations are pretty good, ladies and gentlemen, because I was a chief of the California Highway Patrol. I did have 1,200 officers that reported to me. I did deal with a lot of reimbursable contracts. I knew what it cost to hire an officer for protection, for escort duty. I knew what an officer made on straight time with their base salary and their retirement and their health care. I know all this stuff cost. So I lowballed it. I lowballed everything with LAPD because the salaries are very similar between the CHP and LAPD. So I lowballed it. I wanted to go very, very conservative. And based on what I know about that detail that she had from LAPD, it was costing a minimum of about $50,000 a day. A day for LAPD to babysit her at her residence. By the way, this multimillionaire. A minimum. I'm going to say it again. A minimum of 50 grand a day for LAPD. So you have the fiscal side, and then the officers that were there, they were from an elite unit, the Metro unit, elite unit LAPD. And then the reason they were there is because they do dignitary protection. I worked a lot with Metro over the years when I did protection for heads of state, including the president. Worked very closely with Metro. Absolutely cream of the crop men and women, and I admire them. But they also do crime suppression. They do investigations. They do a lot of high-end stuff when it comes to reducing the crime in Los Angeles. Those men and women are taken off of those details and, again, ordered to babysit her. The only reason Kamala Harris ended this is because of the political backlash. Look, I don't know which one's true. Is she in danger? Is she not in danger? If she's in danger, then I guess you keep the detail there, don't you? If she's not in danger, then why'd you start in the first place? This is a complete lack of leadership. This is a complete ineptness we see, not only from Karen Bass, but from her ilk all across, now I won't say just her party, but primarily. LAPD withdraw security details for Harris. What they're saying, last week, Metro officers have been pulled from working crime suppression cases, San Fernando Valley, to provide Harris protection after President Donald Trump ended Biden's extension, so forth and so on. So now they're sitting with her Brentwood home. The decision drew heavy criticism from the public, including the board of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. And this is a quote from Protective League. Pulling police officers from protecting everyday Angelenos to protect a failed presidential candidate who also happens to be a multimillionaire with multiple homes and who can easily afford to pay for her own security is nuts. The board said in a statement, the mayor should tell Governor Newsom that if he wants to curry favor with Miss Harris and her donor base, that he should open up his wallet because LA taxpayers should not be fitting the bill for this ridiculousness. And it goes on and on and on, the article. Again, I'm telling you right now, as of today, the recording of this podcast, I don't know where the Highway Patrol stands with their protection. I am curious to see, though, if that comes to a public end as well, if it's still in place. But we will see what happens. God bless those of you living in the state of California, the once great state of California, the once great city of Los Angeles. And God bless everybody listening. For your Leo Nation, I am the Chief. I will see you next time on this great, great channel. Take care.